basic tenets of the third world neutralism.
Exactly.
Intervention in the internal affairs of other countries, things like that.
And now that they've got Russia behind their back, it makes it very difficult. Mr. President, I realize you're very busy, and thank you very much for taking time to see us.
They told me that you would have very limited period here, so we really are actually busy working on the finishing touches on which particular decrees, orders, and instructions have to be modified or are considered rescinded by the termination of martial law.
And then you've got the Pope coming in.
Well, I have left that to the usual committee, and Cardinal Sin is well on top of it. So is the Papal Nuncio. I don't think it poses a problem, except that it requires some of the public works people who are here waiting to find out first, have we settled the problem of expenditures, things like that. My position is he's a head of the state. He should be treated as such.
Yeah, they're probably worried about the bookkeeping. Well, Mike Silver, our producer, has been all over doing a survey of the various places that the Pope will visit.
So, is that so?
Yeah, he will be one of the producers on the trip for us.
He and Bishop Maxinko should get together. Yeah.
So, Mr. President, I thought
I'm ready.
We'd talk a little bit about martial law, a little bit about the upcoming papal visit. As usual, some tough questions, which you've never ducked on me.
To be expected, to make it interesting.
Right, okay.
Without sounding vitriolic and adversary.
No, we've had some pretty good luck in the past. Lim, anytime you're ready.
I'm ready.
Mr. President, you've just lifted martial law. It was enforced for some time, over 8 years. Why now? Why this particular time?
First of all, let me immediately set the background of the preparations for the termination of martial law. The preparations were made as early as 1976, after the First Lady succeeded in obtaining a ceasefire and the termination of hostilities in the south through the Tripoli Agreement when she visited Colonel Gaddafi in Libya. You remember that the Tripoli Agreement was signed in December 23, 1976. The ceasefire was signed too then on January 7, 1977. Another formal ceasefire was signed here within Philippine jurisdiction between the representative of the Moro National Liberation Front and the South Commander, Admiral Espaldon. A enforcement group was set up to enforce the provisions of that ceasefire and the Tripoli Agreement. It was agreed the plebiscite would be called. It was objected to initially, but later on the Libyan government through Colonel Gaddafi agreed to it. They suggested some questions. The Secretary General, Karim Gay of the Islamic Conference, agreed to the same questions, and the leader of the Moro National Liberation Front, Nur Miswari, also sent a letter confirming the fact that they supported the questions to be asked, among which were the form of government, how many autonomous governments were going to be set up, and whether they were agreeable for the Moro National Liberation Front to take over that government. The people voted and almost unanimously supported the idea that instead of one, there be two autonomous governments, because historically the Muslims in the south are divided into several tribal units, groups, and more or less two-unit autonomous government would just about answer their requirements. So regions 9 and 12 were organized, 5 provinces each. And in accordance with the result of the plebiscite, an election was called, and the members of the Legislative Council were elected, so they recommended an executive committee, which I appointed. I offered the chairmanship to Mr. Nur Miswari. He refused it. We therefore gave the memberships to other rebel commanders. When this happened, I was ready to lift martial law, because by this time the leftist, rightist communist rebellion had been practically neutralized, except for small pockets in, say, Samar, Kalinga, Payao. And then came the calamity, the tsunami, the earthquake under the sea south of Mindanao, which resulted in a tsunami or a tidal wave that killed about 8,000 of our people. Because of this, we attended to the calamity first, and all of us here in Luzon, including the Christian governors, went in there in August of 1977. We invited the Quadripartite Commission of the Islamic Conference. This is this 42 Arab nation and Muslim nation organization, which meets almost annually. And the Quadripartite Commission, composed of Somalia, Senegal, Libya, and Saudi Arabia, came. And they saw that there was no such thing as genocide, and therefore I was all the more ready to proclaim the termination of martial law. Then came the horrendous and brutal killing of the 1st Infantry Division Commander, General Bautista. He was invited to a peace conference by Usman Saleh, one of the rebel leaders. And while he was getting out of his jeep with his staff officers, they were all massacred, 32 of them. This resulted in such a reaction among the people that it was impossible to lift martial law. This was 1977. In 1978, I instead asked that the agreement, the Tripoli agreement, be now worked out in detail. The 2 delegations met in Tripoli. They failed after a continuous meeting of about a month or 2. And so we had to send the First Lady all over again to Libya to talk to Colonel Gaddafi, who talked to me over the telephone. And we agreed on certain undertakings, one of which was the proclamation of an area to be called an autonomous area, and the organization of the autonomous governments. With this came also the call to an election which was authorized by the October 27, 1976 amendments of the Constitution, which called for the election of an interim National Assembly for the entire country. And remember, that was 76. And this was 78, and we hadn't elected the members. And I was in a hurry. What we had was an advisory legislative council, and I was not content with that. I wanted elected members to constitute a legislature. Some people think that I terminated the Congress of the Philippines by executive fire. That's not true. They were terminated by the approval of the Constitution of the Philippines, or ratification, before their sessions in January of 1973. Some people also claim, I was reading one of the columnists of the Bulletin today, Mr. Apolonio Batalla, who claims that it is possible, it cannot be discounted, that I extended my term by proclaiming martial law. There was no need to proclaim martial law in order to extend my continuance in power, because I was the party leader of the overwhelmingly majority party. And the convention had elected a parliamentary form of government. Presumably, therefore, I would I could have continued as leader of the government without any further action. No need to proclaim martial law. This is one of the matters that non-lawyers or non-political scientists, those who do not understand the finer points of constitutional law, do not seem to grasp. And that is that the parliamentary system allows the continuance of a leader in power without the exercise of emergency powers or anything like that, so long as he holds the majority of the members in the National Assembly. And that's what happened. I was preparing for that, and so many things intervened. Then the crisis in '79 intervened. And you remember on my birthday, I said I had planned to proclaim martial law. But because of the increase in OPEC prices, we will now watch if in 18 months the economic crisis does not worsen. It is my intention to consider the lifting of martial law. This was said in September of 1979. So 1980 came, and I kept telling everybody, we will now consider lifting martial law. This was during my birthday of 1980. If the things don't change by the end of the year or even or immediately thereafter, we will now consider the lifting of martial law. And why now? Because there is no ideal time for the lifting of martial law. We had been prevented, or the attempt to terminate martial law had been aborted many times. 76, 77, 78, 79, 80. Now that's about enough. I have had enough of these circumstances preventing the lifting of martial law. And so, considering the relative peace and order and the relative successes of all the programs, including the economic program, plus the fact that we have Minister Yamani who visited with us saying that no, the OPEC situation will not get worse, the prices will not go up, there may be an oversupply even of oil. And he didn't believe. He told me frankly, I don't believe that you will be in danger, or any of the countries will be in danger of suffering any economic reverses because of OPEC. With that, I directed the planners in government to prepare for the termination of martial law.
Mr. President, we've been reading in some of the press about some of the problems recently. For example, the bombing at the travel convention, some activity on the campuses with the students, the statements by the opposition, and so on. Still some problems in the South, and it just seems to someone who has seen martial law before and after the fact that this particular timing was no better or worse than a lot of the other times. And some critics of yours have said that you lifted it really because of the new administration in Washington coming in, and also the visit of the Pope, that the timing had more to do with that.
The problem with people who speculate about the conduct of government is that they think less of national interest than of their own peculiar prejudices. The trouble with studies and assessments of this nature is that you really can't read exactly what are the imponderables that work on the leader in making a decision. First of all, you must remember that as of 1976, I had decided there was no anarchy in the land. Now, under the Constitution, anarchy is the legal basis for the proclamation of martial law. Secondly, I had maintained that the Commander-in-Chief provision should be utilized to restructure the society. And radically, we had restructured our society from 1972 to 1976 We had converted a rice deficit country, which at the last importation of rice imported $500 million worth of rice, into a rice exporting country. We had altered the complexion of our exports. The economic planning was centralized. Originally, we had 4 historic exports: plantation crops, unprocessed, raw, primary products like centrifugal sugar, coconut meat, copra, unprocessed into coconut oil, unworked logs, and mineral ore. And all of these must have constituted about, 80 to 85% of the exports of the Philippines. In 1972, they constituted only 1.1 billion. We increased this to 5 and even more, probably 10 times, and diversified. 1/2 of all the exports now are non-traditional items: semi-processed food, garments, textiles, electronics, and things like that. Now, we restructured our society. No matter what anybody says, society we have now is completely different from the society we had before. Before, you could not get anybody come out of their homes beyond 6 o'clock in Central Luzon, Ilocos, Cagayan Valley, Samar, Leyte, Mindanao. You know that. And even here, everybody was fleeing. They were sending all the families out, and our foreign exchange reserves was practically zero. How much are the foreign exchange reserves now? 3,100,000,000. We restructured even our income groups. There are more people now earning, say, 30,000 pesos and more annually than in 1965, 1972. How much more? More than double. And there are less people now who are earning 1,999 pesos and less. They used to constitute 1/4 of our population. Now they don't constitute about 1/10 of our population. Now, this kind of restructuring, economic and social, then you have people proud of their traditions, of their past. They want to know what their past was. They have recovered their self-respect. They're not apologizing or making any excuses for whatever happened in the past. They are making up for it. And they're proud to be Filipinos. More than anything else, this to me is one of the greatest restructurings, the spiritual, internal restructuring. Even those who are living in the slums have been motivated into improving their houses. But they were told, we will advance to you the money. You remember, we are the first country that the World Bank lent money to, 63 million, for urban renewal, which really means improving the slums. But before we spent the money, I experimented with a new approach. Instead of just giving the money and dole it out to them free, in order that they can improve their houses and realign those houses, put up the infrastructure. We tested out a new scheme in my part of the country where we upgraded villages, but we told the villagers, you'll have to pay for the cost. And we don't care, it may take 25, 30 years, but this is money that is advanced to you, but which you must repay in order that it will regenerate itself and it can be used continuously as a sum of money to keep on helping others after you, and you have to learn a livelihood. And so you see in the slums now, the core of housing and human settlements is not building houses, it is livelihood. It's teaching the man to learn, to earn his own income and to stand on his own feet. It's the typical Asian saying, teach the man how to fish instead of giving him fish, and you will help him throughout his life. And that's what has happened. Now, all of this went into the, should we say, studies as to whether we should now proclaim martial law termination or not. And to say that it is to satisfy this or that administration. Now, we respect President Reagan. We have the highest appreciation for all his statements to the effect that he will maintain.
Excuse me.
Oh. Can somebody get me a glass of water?
Where you talked about the not doing it to please any administration.
I can say that much as we respect the new administration in the United States, the lifting of martial law was not ordered by me to satisfy any foreign administration. It was done for the national interest of the Philippines. It could have been done in 79, could have been done in 78, 77, but many things intervened. At the same time, neither was it done because it was no longer intolerable. A survey conducted by very knowledgeable groups, not only one, two surveys, indicated most of the people were against the lifting of martial law.
Mr. President, those of us who remember what things were like before martial law, the problems with guns, violence in the streets, the chaos, the confusion, the various newspaper campaigns where you didn't know exactly what was going on. What guarantee is there after martial law is lifted that things will not go back to where they were then?
The institutional changes, plus the change in the spirit of the people. You know, you cannot, let us say, get the leftist, rightist rebellion to be, to assume the proportions that they reached in 1970, 69, without a violent reaction on the part of the people, who are now trained to identify those whom we would consider the enemies of our republic. You try and foist a new ideology like socialism, communism, or even anarchy on the people. The first line of defense is the barangay. Now, the barangay is the smallest political unit in the Philippines. It's self-reliant, it's self-sufficient. In some instances, it has its own trained armed men without any arms. But it can call upon the armed forces to release the arms to it so that they can protect the villages. And they know exactly what's happening in the village. They know new faces, they know new activities, and anybody comes in, and they band together. Now, in some instances in the past, in places like Samar, Cagayan, the leadership of the village had been liquidated by the NPA, but the reaction has been just as shocking, because immediately all the other barangays got together and went after the culprits. And that has prevented any of the old tax collecting, agit-prop activities of the leftist, rightist rebellion.
That's, Mr. President, that's in the countryside. How
Yes.
about in the metropolitan areas like Manila?
Same thing. The metropolitan Manila area is better organized. And let me say, the barangay tanons, these are the barangay policemen, are better trained, because many of them are not only reservists, but old veterans of the fighting in the Muslim areas and fighting against the Hukbalhams. And these are the fellows who know how to handle guns. You see, don't you read in the papers how criminal syndicates are eliminated by the people themselves. The policemen come in, and the tunnels have already caught the criminals. They can't prosper anymore. And this is why, when some months ago, it was, let's say, the Asta bombing, the Light a Fire movement, and the Umbrella Sokdom organization started to engage in arson, in the bombing, and the like. Why were all the leaders and participants caught within a few weeks after the bombing? Why? Because the citizenry are now enraged about this type of activity. There is a point where the people will watch and observe whether the bombing is justified because of many grievances, valid grievances, injustice, iniquities, corruption on the part of the government. But they look around and see that the government is really trying to clean up. This is the only administration where you see public officials being sent to jail for corruption, for inefficiency being removed. And this is the only administration where you have an ombudsman who conducts an investigation quietly and prosecutes no matter who gets hurt, whether they are KBL members or members of the opposition or neutral members. Then you have, this is the only administration where you have a special court to handle corruption cases, the Sandigan Bayan. And the people, of course, I believe, appreciate this. Taxes increased from 5 billion to 36 billion over 5 years.
More efficient collection or more
More efficient collection, but more voluntary support by the people. 90% of taxes everywhere, whether here or in the United States, are voluntary payments. Only 5% are compulsory payments. And when you see a jump like that, a quantum leap like that, it means that more people are voluntarily paying taxes because they know where it's going. They see all the infrastructure. You can't imagine the people, let's say in the outlying barrios, seeing a bulldozer for the first time, a grader, a street and a road being cemented, and they wonder where is this money all coming from? Well, it's coming from what we have saved. Did you know that at the beginning of my presidency, 85% of all the money in government went to salaries and furniture and equipment and new automobiles? We knocked this down immediately to 65%, saving 20% for infrastructure. Infrastructure, how much did the old administration used to spend? About 800 million, 900 million. Now we're spending anywhere from 12 to 20 billion. Can you imagine that? It is including loans. Including loans. On our own alone, we are spending 12 to 13 billion pesos. And then we borrow in the long term. Now, of course, some of my critics say, hey, that's all that Marcos knows, to borrow money. Well, the World Bank refused to lend money to the Philippines before I became president. Did you know that?
I did not.
40 million dollars was all that the World Bank would lend in 1 year because of inefficiency in the handling of the funds, the serious corruption that was endemic, and at the same time the lack of planning.
What is the current World Bank assessment now of the Philippines?
Our indebtedness about 11 to 12 billion, and the most important part is before I became president, 90% of all the indebtedness had to be paid within a year or two, short term. Now we have been able to extend this to long-term indebtedness. Before my term, we could not pay our indebtedness. There was a time when the what you call the debt payment ratio in relation to foreign exchange earnings was 42%, meaning 42% of everything that you earn in your exports, you plowed back to pay your indebtedness. I've knocked this down to 18%. Now our legitimate level under our own self-imposed domestic law is 20%, but I've even reduced the debt payment ratio to 18.7. That's the accurate figure. 18.6, 18.7. Notwithstanding the fact that we have increased our expenditures in the infrastructure. Now, when you have all of this and you get the people to support all these efforts, don't you think it's about time to lift martial law?
Mr. President, let me play the devil's advocate again. One of the critics, one of the key criticisms has been the more things change, the more they remain the same. That while you have lifted the semantic term martial law, you still maintain the power. You can still step in and do what you want. How do you answer that question?
Of course not. On the contrary, the truth of the matter is that I now have transferred the power to legislate to the Batasan Pambansa. They say, yes, but in case of an emergency, the President can exercise certain powers. Under the old Constitution, that was just as true as it is now. Under Article 8, Section 15 of the Constitution, I'm going to start getting pedantic like a professor, the National Assembly can authorize me. Presumably, therefore, since I control the National Assembly, meaning our party is in control, I can get any kind of emergency powers from the National Assembly. So whether it is one way or the other, it is a matter of style and intention. I don't intend to exercise any emergency powers without first giving the Batasan Pambansa or the National Assembly the opportunity and the right to rectify any errors, to meet any emergency, unless, again I say, you are suddenly met with revolution. You have to make a few arrests, like Lincoln did after the attack on Fort Sumter. You remember that classic case. After the attack on Fort Sumter, he ordered the arrest of those whom he considered had participated in the treachery to the Union. And the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States ordered their release. And he said, you enforce that order. I'm not going to enforce it. And he kept the Union together. Now, that's a different matter. That's a different matter altogether, because when there is violence, let's not talk about other emergency powers. I can proclaim martial law all over again, but I have no such intentions. The response to crisis must be calibrated. Now that we have acquired a more sophisticated attitude towards crisis, and we can more or less grade the urgency of action necessary to meet crisis, then we can calibrate our actions. And as far as I'm concerned, the Batasan Pambansa, the National Assembly, has shown its capability to meet emergency. Well, this does not mean that if there is, I repeat, any sudden upsurge of criminality that the Batasan cannot handle, but I won't exercise the power. I will. I have notified everybody. I will. Don't kid yourselves. I'm not going to allow all these advances and these changes, this progress, to go down the drain. We would it would be a delusion to our people. And they would be so disappointed that they would be willing to take any leadership which can guarantee stability.
Mr. President, along that line, let me ask you a question. Again, remembering what politics was like in the Philippines in the old days, with the peso sandwiches and the buying of votes and all those things, and the absence of real political dialogue over the past 8+ years, how do you foresee politics in the Philippines emerging again, the kind of democratic politics?
We need 2 years for the opposition to develop. And this is why the people turned down an election for the presidency this year. I was for submitting myself to the people and asking them, do you still want me to continue in politics or not? If you don't, vote against me and I'll retire. If you do, then vote for me. But when the Batasang Pambansa, the National Assembly, conducted hearings, they were hooted out of the conference room. Said, what are you talking about? We just finished elections in 78. We had elections in 79. We had elections in 1980 for local officials like governors and mayors. And you want us to start elections again? What do you think this is, a banana republic? And so they said, no, we'll give the opposition a chance to organize. And I agree. I agree that the opposition is weak. They are divided, fragmented. I agree that they need time to develop. I would like to see a responsible opposition organized.
Do you see any young, unknown, potentially responsible opposition developing? There are people who have said that over the past 8 years, because of martial law, because of your having really the supreme power, that younger politicians, would-be politicians, really haven't had a chance to develop. How would you answer that?
They haven't been listening to the Batasang Pambansa. You see the former magna cum laude graduates coming up now and speaking their piece. And I noticed that they're learning the ropes. Quite a few of them, you know. We probably should accept the fact that the older generation has a responsibility, and that is to train them. Now, this is the reason for the fact that I've organized a standing committee in the cabinet. This standing committee is doing my job now, meaning they're making decisions. I usually don't reverse them. I change the membership of the standing committee. These are, of course, cabinet members, but we invite members of the National Assembly, members of the Governors League and the Mayor's League. And we try and watch what new phase comes into the political drama, and whether he offers new hope, whether he has got a perspective, not only in terms of winning election, and whether he has imbibed the same ideals, that he's willing to submerge his own personal interests for that of the country, because more than anything else, this is what we need. These are the types of politicians that we need. Politicians, they will be, and they will think of their survival as a primary objectives. But they have to think in terms of the nation, what it needs from them. You can immediately spot. You can immediately spot from among the younger generation the people who are demagogues and those who are really sincere patriots. At least I flatter myself in believing that our generation of leaders and those who follow after us have acquired enough sophistication to know more or less who are the younger fellows who can be dependent upon to carry the flag, to carry the banner of the Reformation, the Philippine Renaissance, as it were.
And you accept the fact that one of these days, one of these younger fellows is probably going to have an election against you and win?
No. One of these days, I'll probably run him for Prime Minister. Well, I step aside and watch. Or one of these days, I'll probably say, look, I'd like to train you fellows to act as the leader of government. Okay, I'll be, let's say, Prime Minister without power. I want the deputy prime ministers to be appointed. I want them to try out the water. Do they know how to swim? Come on, let's throw them into the water.
Much like Lee Kuan Yew is trying to do now, it seems.
Oh, more than that, Lee Kuan Yew is still holding the powers. But what I want to do is for them to make the decisions. I don't intervene at all. I just stand aside and don't, do anything unless it becomes so urgent that you have to hold back any venal, truly venal and truly corruptive decisions or unwise judgments. But, I've been satisfied with the conduct, for instance, of the cabinet members and the Batas and Pambansa. To be frank with you, I floated the idea of an election for president and then left it at that. I refused to talk to anyone about it. I said, no, you decide it. You go around the country and work on it. It's about time, I said, you started working without me. It's not because I am becoming too old, too lazy, or anything like that. I can still outrun any of you anytime. But the thing is, you've got to do some working. You've got to be able to operate the government without me. I can't last forever.
Mr. President, okay, just two last questions.
How long is that?
20 minutes each, right?
Are you using what, videotape?
Videotape, yeah. Okay, Mr. President, just two more questions. The papal visit here became involved in a bit of controversy. The Pope is now coming as a pastoral visit rather than a state visit. Do you think that's right? Are you put out at all by the fact that it's very carefully designed as a pastoral visit rather than a state visit?
All I know is wherever he goes, whether he says it's a pastoral visit or not, he's entitled to be treated as head of state. He is a head of the Vatican. As such, he's recognized as the head of a separate governmental entity. I have written him, and he has answered back that he is grateful for my offer that we place at his disposal the facilities of government. Now, if he were merely coming here as a spiritual head of a religion, then we would not be justified in spending all this money for his visit. But he comes as a head of state, and this justifies the expenditures to make his visit pleasant and effective.
Mr. President, one last question. There has been some speculation in some of the press that Ninoy Aquino would like to come back to the Philippines. Is there any truth in that? And if so, would you let him come back?
I wouldn't know. The last time I heard was that he was not coming back until after his stint with Harvard. He indeed, of course, indicated a desire to come here on the excuse that it was necessary to stop any violence, and it was necessary for him to convince his friends here to allow a phasing out of martial law instead of a sudden lifting, and that they should, and to convince them to cooperate with me. My answer to that was, perhaps it would be better if he left everybody alone. And if he wants to come back on his own, and not under the pretext that he's going to help me, because I don't think his presence will be of much help, in the sense that his presence usually generates controversy. He is such a type of a man that even among the ranks of the opposition, he will invite quarrels. The other opposition leaders have so indicated to me. And so he, I think, has changed his mind. He'll probably come back after Harvard, and we have enough time to decide then what to do with him. What does he want to do? I'm open-minded. He is not, after all, that important in the sense that the opposition will have to decide, first of all, is he their leader or not? Now, right now, I'm listening to voices other than that of Aquino. I hear Jerry Rojas. I hear Tanyada. I hear Jokno has not signed the UNIDO paper. They want to keep their distance from the others, other opposition leaders. I hear that the liberals want to be separated from the nationalistas, and the independent groups want to be separated from the two other parties. Now, if this continues, by 1984, they'll wreck their chances for a comeback. To at least control a substantial membership in the 200-man National Assembly. I say 200 men because that's what they tell me is the target of the National Assembly for the new parliament. And that would be a pity, because we would like to have a parliament where there is full, free debate. Look, I grew up in an atmosphere of free debate. I love debate. I'd like to meet anybody who disagrees with me. I've said so repeatedly in the past, and I say so again. We want a parliament and a National Assembly where all sectors of the community will have a chance to be heard through their representatives, and where, as your Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes has said, the truth may come out of the free trade of ideas. I believe that I am not alone. I believe that my generation is used to this kind of give and take. This unfortunate conclusion of some of the Western observers of the effect that we set up this dictatorship because we are afraid of free speech and free debate just isn't correct.
You know, I'm very happy to hear you say this morning that you disagreed with one of the columnists in the newspapers. I think that's a very healthy sign, too.
Oh, they have been coming into all kinds of conclusions. And, of course, my idea of a free press is everybody should express his views and let the truth come out. This isn't going to stop me from speaking out loud and clear when I hear somebody saying an obvious lie, like the UNIDO paper saying that on his speech proclaiming martial law, he promised that he would terminate martial law at the end of his term in 73. I did no such thing. I never said anything like that. I was very, very cautious because I did not know whether I would end up fighting in the hills or just giving up to the superior forces of the enemy. We counted the guns that they were holding, and we realized that they had more guns than the armed forces of the Philippines. So we had to pick them one by one, Napoleon style, shades of Austerlitz and all that rock.
That was the last question, but this brings up one more short one. The military. For a martial law administration, having seen a few others, the military was not quite in as much evidence here as it has been in other countries that I've been. But do you think that there'll be any unhappiness on the part of the military with martial law being lifted? Any temptation, since they have had a reasonable amount of power?
No, I don't believe so, because the military has voluntarily subordinated itself to the civil government, even under martial law. You see, our martial law is the American type, not the European type. The European type of martial law is where the military takes over the entire government. It's a state of siege of war. Whereas the American type, as explained by all your experts, Bordick and Willoughby and the rest of them, is where the civil government calls on the military and says, look, these are our decisions. Will you enforce them? And the military comes in and enforces the decision of the civil government. And therefore, the military is subject to the orders of a civilian authority. And this is fundamental in all constitutions that have followed the Constitution, which, of course, ours is. And so the military has been a balancing wheel, as it were. Never in the history of the military has it ever imagined or thought that it could take over the government, even forcibly, at any given time. And therefore, it has acquired a culture of its own, shall we say, a tradition that it recognizes the civil authority and it enforces the decisions of the civil authority. So they will not be unhappy, continuing as it is, subordinate to the civil authority.
Mr. President, thank you very much.
It has been a pleasure, I assure you. Say, by the way, have you ever been back to the Tasada?
No, I haven't, as a matter of fact. I haven't seen Manda in an awfully long time.
Well, Manda has been out with a young player, the one who saved the white rhino in Africa.
Oh, really?
We're trying to save the